Well, hello. I think we're live. Happy Easter. Oh my goodness. How wonderful. Happy Friday to you. I have her here. This is Patricia Coughlin, professor, doctor. This is my mentor, and I've shared her with you many a time in my mind how wonderful I feel she is. And I'm so pleased to see you on this fine day. You'll have to bear with me as I come into this and make sure that I'm doing it right so we can all see and hear one another. I'm so thrilled to see you, but I'm new to Be Live. So hello. I can see you. Fantastic. Donna, Jin, Jackie, nice to see you. This is Dr. Patricia Coughlin, who is a mentor of mine for many years. Beautiful lady. And I know if you've been watching recently how excited you know I am to know this lady. She is generous enough to lend us some of her time. And I was just excited to share her with you because she's a brilliant lady. What I love about this woman, I met her first time, I think, on stage in Oxford. You were giving a seminar. And for me, she has the goods. She gets it. She's really powerhouse lady, brilliant mind, very published, well-known, brilliant. But she gets us. She gets the struggle and strife, what we're doing wrong to set ourselves up. But for me, can explain with brilliant clarity how genius we are with our weird and wonderful things. So when I now come to talk with her, what I would love for you guys to do is really use this time that we have here. We'll probably be here about 40 minutes, 45 minutes, if we're lucky. Mm-hmm. So you know how I roll. What I love, if you have a question, by all means ask, put a Q in the box and then your question. Anything pretty much goes in terms of what are you going through at the moment? What's going on in your life that maybe you're curious about that you'd like to talk to? This is a clinical psychologist with how many years experience do you have?
I hate to tell you. I mean, almost 40.
Almost 40. So you know how we roll. I got your back. This is my page. I love you guys. You get my respect for being here. So whatever you want to ask of us, say, share what you know, say who you are, where you're coming from, what you do, use the page, just interact, whatever goes. And we'll see where we go with it. So what do I want to say to you? I'm excited to share you with people more because I know a lot of my guys don't know you. Mm-hmm. But also, Patricia, you know, how we know each other is through being psychotherapists, essentially. Right. So we got a lot of people who follow on this page who are progressives in their own right, really wanting to understand more about their mind, their psychology, and all the sort of weird and wonderful things that make us up and make us reactive and so on. You do this, if this feels okay for you, put a 1 in the box if you've had a therapy or you've been engaged in counseling of some kind, and perhaps a 2 if you're curious about what it looks like when it's epically good. This is outstanding stuff. We're talking the creme de la creme of proper stuff. And I know that a lot of us can feel let down sometimes when we're in the hands of people who are a little bit naive or they frustrate. Sometimes I was with somebody recently who said, you know, a therapist told them they had a learning disability and they hadn't been aware of that. And so sometimes in any position as a professional, we get the great ones, the not so great ones, the sort of naive ones. So sometimes when I meet people, I don't know about you, Patricia, but I meet people and we've let them down a bit in our profession. People can feel not got and give up easily. And then they miss the chance to speak with someone like you. So this is why I'm just enthralled and so grateful that you're here. In your mind, what is it that you do? What are you about being a psychologist and a teacher and a mentor? What is it about for you to be working with people and talking to people about themselves?
Well, it's interesting. I just finished a treatment with a man who I've been working with for a while who had quite severe symptoms. all kinds of bodily pain, all kinds of unexplained medical symptoms. Literally for 20 years, he'd been going from one doctor to another, had every test under the sun, till finally he was convinced. He realized, right, there was nothing physically wrong, that this was an emotional problem. And so we began to work with the emotional underpinnings. And he got his freedom. And so as we were finishing up, we had a last session this week. And that's what he said. He said, freedom, that should be, he said, the word on outside your door, to help people become emotionally free, free to be who they really are, free to connect in deep and loving ways with other people without the kinds of barriers, right, that we tend to construct. That is my goal. So along the way, of course, you're dealing with symptoms and things like that, but just reducing symptoms or eliminating them is not my ultimate goal. My ultimate goal, again, is really to help people get their freedom and to be authentically who they are and to connect deeply with others. So, and to get through all the barriers that prevent that. So, in a general, that's what I do.
And I love it. And really, wow. You just wow. I love to see it done well when we really take care of somebody when they're just wanting a better life. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, how many of you are watching raise your hand, little hand emoji, or me, or yes, if you are skeptical about psychology and psychologists or counselors going to somebody. And those of you who how can I put this better? What do you have this experience, Patricia, where people come to you and they're not only resistant or fearful about change or embarrassment or shame, but you're going to let them down like somebody else has done?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, again, this same fellow, as we were reviewing his treatment, he said, for some reason, he said, I trusted you within 10 minutes. A lot of people think that it's about liking a therapist, but really what we know from research also is that what really forges the therapeutic bond is competence and skill, and that you trust this person, that this person knows what they're doing, that you're in good hands, that they can take it, and so it's very dispiriting for people to have bad experiences. Almost all my patients have been through several, if not, sometimes 10, 12, different therapists. They've been on medication, they've been in the hospital, right? And haven't been able to get help. And that is really frustrating and dispiriting. Yeah. So it's sort of both the good news and the bad news is that when we look at therapists, just like teachers or surgeons, we fall on the bell-shaped curve when it comes to effectiveness. 20% are better than the rest. There's also like 15, 20% who you should stay away from, right? Who really are going to do damage, right? And you have to trust your own instinct. Don't say, oh, because they have an MD or a PhD, who cares, right? Pay attention to how you feel with this person. And then again, in the middle, you have all the average ones. So what I say and what the research shows is that if you have an average problem, right, your life is going pretty well, you're healthy, but you've been depressed since a breakup, something like that. An average therapist is going to be able to help you. But if you've had repeated attempts to get help, you have anxiety and depression and relationship problems, then who you go to really matters. And you need somebody who we call the super shrinks, right? Brilliant. Right? And so really take this seriously and don't just willy-nilly, go on the internet or, to find a therapist, right? Ask people, ask your doctor, ask people who you trust. And then I would say, again, set up just an initial consultation, right? And really test that person out. I invite patients. I say, hey, this is a two-way evaluation. I'm here to evaluate the nature of your difficulties, and if I think I'm going to be able to help you, but you also have to be evaluating me, right? So I encourage people to take an active role from the start. Yeah, and not just plop themselves passively in the chair. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So,
and just to interject, because I've got background noise here. Do other people have background noise?
I just have sort of fuzzy. It's not terrible, but
frustrating. Do you get a background noise, guys? If you can put the one in the box, if you get a background noise, just to get me a sense. It might just be me. Sorry about it. Frustrating. Oh, I know what it is. It's me being naive as usual. There we go. Sorted it. No, I haven't sorted it. How much of a pain. I'll just roll with it.
Okay.
Let me find myself a second. Those of you that know, and you're here frequently, you guys, you know that you can say what it is that you want to say. Is there something, what I tell you, that's going on for you that you're curious about? Because this is a master here in action that might be about a symptom that you experience. How do I do this, my friends? I'm going to earphones. Can you hear me okay if I do that? Yeah, okay, good.
In some ways it's clear.
I'll say two voices in my head. Is there something going on with you at the moment that you would love to have an insight about, to share something going on with you? And maybe, Patricia, it might be useful to say the kinds of things you hear, because I'm sure a lot of people, you can put 3 in the box, who have been curious, if that's you, about what it means to go and sit in front of a psychotherapist or a psychologist or a counselor. But what kinds of things do you hear about? Because this is, in my mind, often when I do lives, it's almost like giving permission for us to say, me too, blood in there, because we don't talk about this stuff so readily. What kind of things do people come and see you for?
Right. I mean, the everyday, right? What almost all people come in saying is that they have anxiety, they get depressed, and they have relationship difficulties. So what's interesting in our field, as you know, it got very, very cognitive over the past couple decades, right? Cognitive behavioral therapy became, right? They really did a great job of marketing, and putting that out there, that your thoughts somehow create your feelings. Well, we now have neuroscience that makes it very clear that's not the way the brain works. Our thinking brain is very slow. It's the latest addition to our brain. Our feelings, right, get registered in a nanosecond, long before a conscious thought has the chance to come on board. So there's actually no scientific evidence that our thoughts create our feelings. You could be walking down the street and you're not even conscious of it, but maybe there was a smell from a bakery and it triggered a memory, and suddenly you're happy or sad. Now you'll tell yourself a story about that, and that can, make things better or worse. But this is all in the way of saying that just talking about people's conscious thoughts is probably not going to help them get to the bottom of those problems. Most of the people I see, they know they have emotional problems. They're having trouble dealing with their own feelings, and they're having trouble in relationships. And so it's the patients themselves who are seeking out more of an emotion-focused kind of therapy. That's what they want help with. They don't want somebody telling them they're thinking wrong, right? They've already been there, and it's not helping when anxiety gets triggered, right? Or when there's a conflict in a relationship. So those are the 3 things that I would say 90% of the patients come in with: anxiety, depression, and relationship problems.
And wow, in a big way. I've got a challenge on my hands here, which is my messages have gone down and I've got background noise, so I'm doing my best to roll with this.
Oh, okay.
What I would love to see and do is encourage people, and I'm going to do it while I look at comments online, is look at people's comments, because people are going to want to say stuff, and for some reason I've been cut off. So it's the man plans, God laughs thing. So let me look at it this way to see. This is why I love Poppy so much. So much good stuff. Okay, good. So people are on board. We're together. We're getting it. You're just going to have to bear with me, my friends, for being a bit of a mess with the technology. What can I ask Patricia for you while she's here? Because really, I think it's fair to say anything goes with you. Is that fair?
Sure.
Yeah. Is there something going on with you that you're curious about? Whether it's physiological, whether it's thoughts, whether it's struggles or sort of stumbling blocks or pattern repeats for you. Use her. Vicky says, my grandson is 7 years old. Is there an age cutoff for children too young to get help?
Yeah, now I am not a child therapist, so I just want to say that right up front, right? So I treat adults. But there are people who specialize in treating children. And there is no reason, if a child is suffering, if they're symptomatic, if they're afraid to go to school, if they have nightmares, you should certainly get them help, and very specific help. Ask your pediatrician, ask people at school, and definitely get a child help. But again, it needs to be specific, someone who specializes in treating children.
Yeah. And I would say, I mean, I'm not sure what you're thinking there, Vicky, but I would say any age, it depends on our approach, because many people do use art and all kinds of things. So when you use the word symptomatic, what you mean by that is there's a display of some kind of dis-ease. Am I right? Like a headache or...
Exactly.
Can you say a bit about what
is having, phobias? Again, a phobia won't go to school. Something out of the ordinary is acting out, right? Having fights with other kids at school, biting, things like this. These are signals the kid is telling you, right, that they're in distress. And I would also say that at the other end of the spectrum, I mean, I've treated people who are 80 years old. It's never too late. And in fact, facing aging and death will often bring things up that people don't want to die until they've resolved. So, so there really is no age limit on getting help to understand ourselves and to heal wounds that we're carrying around. Yeah.
One of the things while I scroll here to see people's questions that I think is very common, which we don't understand very well, is the kind of, I mean, you would call them, I think, defenses against emotional closeness. This is oftentimes what I'm teaching about, and we don't. It's not readily understandable, really, unless you're involved in the kind of work that you're doing specifically. I think a lot of people get caught in symptoms of, for example, passive aggression or somatization, where the body is talking for us, and we don't appreciate how costly it is to stay and tolerate those kinds of things. Would you mind giving an example of somebody or experiences you've had where you've met somebody who's symptomatic in some kind of a way, whatever comes to mind, where it's cost them to tolerate those kinds of experiences physiologically or otherwise, and what you've seen? So an example of something you've seen, somebody's presented a certain way that they're just getting by dealing with that thing, and what you've seen unfold through working with them from symptom through to...
I'm not quite sure what you're asking. A couple different things, right? One is about avoiding closeness, and why would people do that, right? In one way, human beings are wired for emotion and for emotional connection with others. And yet, especially in our culture and our time, people are avoiding close contact with each other. They have trouble with eye contact. They have trouble opening up and revealing themselves. And they end up lonely. I mean, there's a real epidemic of loneliness. And, why would people do that? Well, it's because they've been hurt, right? And they've been burned in close connections, and they've got a lot of anger toward the people that have hurt them. And if you haven't dealt with those feelings, right, the longing and the pain and the anger, then you're not going to be able to let anybody close. Because when anybody, even a therapist or someone who's trying to help, comes close to you, you know, immediately what gets triggered in your unconscious mind are the feelings and experiences of what's happened when other people came close, right, and hurt you or abused you, right? So you're going to have to deal with those feelings in order then to be able to let people close to you again. So that was the first thing you mentioned, right? And then you started to talk about the different ways that symptoms or indications, again, that something is wrong, right, can show up. So the traditional psychological signs are like anxiety and depression, but we have disguised symptoms too, right? Like you mentioned, it can look like it's a physical problem. Chronic headaches, back pain, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. A lot of these, let me say that in no way am I suggesting that anybody's making up these symptoms. Okay, so people are having very real pain, very real, crushing exhaustion. It's just that when we do the tests, we're finding out there's not a medical cause for it, right? So though the exhaustion is real, the pain is real. The source, in many cases, is emotional, but that's hidden. In fact, one of our colleagues, Dr. Alan Abbas, and his colleague, Dr. Schubner, just wrote a book called Hidden from View, right? So there are doctors who see these symptoms all the time. Again, chronic pain is an epidemic in this country. And yet it really is from stress and from the chronic suppression of emotion. This causes very real symptoms, right, in the body on the physical level, right? And yet just taking medication and, you know, isn't going to help you get to the bottom of that. So very often, and people are starting, I think the general public is becoming wise to this, and they're getting leery of taking more and more medication. And they're saying, hey, wait a minute, you know, why am I having these symptoms in the first place? Why am I so exhausted? What, right? And very often, again, there is an emotional basis. And psychotherapy, which is really the least invasive, there are no side effects, right? Right to therapy like there is to medication. So so these symptoms, these indications that something is wrong, something needs your attention, right, can take all these different kinds of forms, right? Either this social isolation or anxiety and depression or headaches or gut problems, right? All kinds of things that can bring people in. Yeah.
Is she good? Is she good? I have a question here, Jackie. How do I share my vulnerability with my students without looking a failure? Jackie, you're a coach, aren't you, my darling? Just put in the chat. What kind of? I'm quite sure.
Or a teacher.
Thoughts. How do I share my vulnerability with my students without looking like a failure? For example, I've been through a very rough week in Morocco for various reasons and feel like I've gone backwards. I know in my heart I'm a warrior, but I feel some shame for not coping.
Right. So the question is about sharing that with students.
Mindfulness teacher. Thanks, Jackie.
And, you know, before asking, well, how do I do it and when do I do it, we really have to ask why. You know, why would you want to share that with students? And so I think when we're clear about our why, that it's not just out of our own need. We don't want to use our students, right, for our own emotional needs, right? We need to get those met in our personal life. But if you're clear about your why, that you're someone who has integrity, that you want to practice what you preach, that in revealing your own journey, you're modeling and teaching something to your students. So as long as you're clear about why you're doing this and that it's actually serving your students, and that there also is actually strength in vulnerability, right? That you're strong enough to reveal this, right?
Yeah.
And certainly don't want to, shame yourself for being human, right? That you're coming from a place of, again, sharing this really for their benefit as well as for you.
Yeah. So you're modeling health and vulnerability and embracing it to say, listen, I'm human too, and this is how I do it on a good day, in theory.
Exactly. But I think we do have to be careful when we're teachers and therapists, again, to make sure that we're not using these people for our own needs, right? So that, you do have other people you can go to for that. And once you feel like you have some understanding of what's going on, and again, you can share it in such a way that you are teaching something, right, that's going to offer your students something, then I think, there's a lot to be gained from that.
Yeah. Perfect. Yes, I knew this. I'd forgotten, she says, Brene Brown stuff. She's a fan of Brene as well. Karen, are you okay to go with a couple more questions?
Sure. I'm here.
Karen is saying, I have fibromyalgia. Very painful. Trying to treat with good emotional health. Question: what steps would you recommend other than working with ASM? She's in my program. She's doing self-mastery. What steps would you recommend? I have fibromyalgia, very painful.
Yeah.
What would you say about that?
Really painful. I mean, I would say I actually have a very specific recommendation for you. So Dr. Howard Schubiner, Schubiner, has done really the hallmark study on using the kind of emotion-focused therapy that I do in a group with fibromyalgia patients. And these patients had been suffering on average 20 years with very severe fibromyalgia, had tried everything. This is only a 4-week group course. At the end of 4 weeks, like 58% of them had no pain. And now it's really quite remarkable. So he has laid out this whole program in a book called Unlearn Your Pain. Lord. So you can do that. It's like a workbook. In the beginning, he'll describe specifically the mechanism in which suppressing not just your emotions of anger and pain, but also the impulses that come with that. When we're angry, when somebody's hurt us, let's face it, we want to get back at that person, right? But oh no, not me. I'm not violent. I wouldn't do it. So we repress. Really, I want to smash him in the head, but I end up with a headache, right? So it's really working with being very specific about when this started, what was happening in your life at that time, tracking, flare-ups, what triggers it, what are the emotional triggers, and then really finding ways to get to it's not just talking about feelings, it's really feeling those difficult feelings of pain and rage, and letting yourself face and talk about or write about, the most primitive part of us, not that you're going to actually do it, but again, you just felt like, pushing that woman, under the bus or whatever, right? So it's very important to be able to experience and in some way, in a safe way, express in words or on paper what those feelings and impulses want to do. And there's a lot of evidence that this is extraordinarily helpful because our brain really can't tell the difference between an emotional pain and a physical pain. It lights up the same part. So it's very easy for, especially if we tend to suppress those anxiety-provoking feelings, for it to get transferred into a physical pain. Like David Schnarch talks about how people would rather have a pain in the ass, right, a pain in the back, right, than a pain in their heart, right? So by allowing ourselves to feel the pain on an emotional level, right, it can free it up from being transferred into a physical pain. So I would highly recommend Dr. Schubner's book, Unlearn Your Pain. I think you would find it very, very helpful.
Beautiful. Thank you, Patricia. Look at this. Look at what happens when you ask the question, right?
Yeah,
incredible.
Yeah.
I know so many people who get value from that question. It's just beautiful. When we ask, how would you know that she would know this unless you ask?
Right.
Davika is asking, I did talking therapy for years. It kept me in my head. It took an alternative healing modality to tap into my emotions via visualizations as it bypassed my thoughts. I was told my blocks in life are an emotional block and my pains and illnesses were psychosomatic. So glad I'm on the right track.
Yeah. And just again to emphasize that psychosomatic does not mean you're making it up. It doesn't mean, oh, it's all in your head. You're having real physical pain, right? But that pain doesn't have an organic basis, right? And again, our brain and our unconscious is really remarkable in the sense that the kind of pain you'll end up having turns out to be very, very specific. So can I tell you an example that I think really makes the point? So this is a woman who came to see me. Again, she had tried many other therapies over the years. She had had debilitating headaches since the age of 8. So bad that she was actually hospitalized on a couple of occasions. And now she was coming for help once again. And not primarily for the headaches, but because she had met a wonderful man and they were engaged to be married. But every time the date came close, she would go into a panic and have to delay the date. And it was going to happen again. And the poor man, who was very patient, but he was saying, I can't take this anymore. So it really was that brought her in. But then we also discovered, right, these headaches. And they were all related. So it turns out we had started working together, and then she comes in one week and she says, I have the worst headache. It's killing me, she says. I say, so what does it actually feel like? She said, well, it's as if my head is being smashed on the sides, and then in my eyes, she said, it's as if they are being pierced with daggers. Okay, so this is the specific language and imaging. So I say, and you say it's been going on. She said it's for 2 weeks, and I've tried everything. I've taken that. Nothing will stop it. So I said, well, what was happening 2 weeks ago? And she said, well, I went home for a visit. And actually, we were sitting at the dining room table, she says, and I'm sitting across from my father and my brother, and my father is yelling at my brother about the way he's eating. And she said, I felt so angry. And I said, okay, so how do you actually feel that inside? Right? And she's like, I'm boiling up. And then I could see her hands going. And I said, in your imagination, like, if that anger came out, what did that anger want to do? She said, I just wanted to smash their heads together. And then she said, and then my father, she said, you know how they say, if looks could kill. She said, if eyes could pierce, I would pierce. And I said to her, do you see what's happening here? I said, smashing heads, piercing eyes. It is what you wanted to do to them. But in a split second, you do it to you. She said, what? So she was blind to this initially. Right? And 3 times. So it was very, very specific, right? That it was so anxiety provoking, so guilt ridden for her to face that she wanted to do this to them, that her unconscious came up with a solution, right? Which was to internal and then also punish her for it, right? But it wasn't random, right? It was this one-to-one correspondence. So this is the other thing that ends up being strangely wonderful in the end, right, is that you will find out that your unconscious, which is speaking in the body, actually makes sense on some level.
Yes.
Right? There's coherence in the unconscious, and you will end up discovering what those specific symptoms really mean, what it really is signifying in your life. Yeah, so it's fascinating.
We've got, wow. Who identifies with that? Please raise your hand. Put a 2 in the box if you identify. Wow, amazing insight, says Christina. To me, this is the thing that we don't hear enough. And this is one of the reasons, Patricia, I get so excited about you and, sharing time with you, is your preparedness to talk about this human stuff. Because this isn't just a few patients or clients, is it? Is it?
Oh, no. I mean, this is, again, it is an epidemic.
Okay, good.
In the country. And also doctors are frustrated. I mean, 60% of all physician visits have nothing to do with organic medical problems. They're psychosocial, they're emotional problems, right? And just think about the way we talk even. They'll say, oh, he gave me such agita. I mean, right? Or, oh, he's such a pain in my neck. She gives me a headache. So a part of us knows this, right? That when we suppress the feelings we have toward these people, right, we're going to end up with a lot of physical as well as emotional distress.
Oh, God, thank you for you. This is the thing that I would love us to all more readily appreciate, is that we're human and this is human stuff. So the idea, the murderous fantasies and so on. Right. Hello, take a number. And we don't talk about it because we don't appreciate how common it is.
Here's another example. I was in the grocery store. I mean, these things happen in the grocery store, right? Because people say, oh, I would never have those. Or how could children have such feelings? I mean, did you ever read fairy tales, right? They're all about murder and so on.
Yeah.
Right? So we're in the grocery store. I'm in the grocery store. And this man is getting very angry and frustrated with his 5-year-old son. And he says to them, he's being very harsh. And the little boy says, I hate you. I wish you would die. And then his father says, well, then, I guess I'm just going to leave you here. And he walks out of the store, leaving this child who then panics, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's also filled with guilt because of what he said. And then he desperately is running after his father. And I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Now, that kid is going to suppress his anger in the future, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so anybody who denies, right, that this isn't happening every day of the week. I mean, even in Home Alone, right, that wonderful movie where Kevin says, I hope my family disappears, right? I mean, we all have those thoughts and feelings. And again, they very often get punished, right, which adds to the guilt, which adds to the tendency to suppress it and end up, where are they going to go? They have to come out somewhere. And the other thing about this that I think is so important is, Paul Wachtel, who's another famous psychologist, a wonderful thinker, talks about not only are having mixed feelings toward loved ones inevitable, right?
Please say more about that. I'm going to stop.
The more you love somebody, the more deeply they can hurt you.
Yeah.
And the more angry you're going to get. Who could you be more angry with than someone you love and need? If you don't care about somebody, they're not going to get you that angry, right? So it's inevitable we're going to have mixed feelings. And we have to be able to tolerate those, or none of our relationships will last, right? As soon as you get angry or hurt, you would just sever your ties, and then you're going to end up alone, right? So it's inevitable, and you have to learn how to deal with that. But Wachtel was also talking about, for the child, it's not just mixed feelings. It's completely incompatible feelings. So in that moment when the child says, I hate you, I wish you would die, or I hope you never come back, they also love and need you. Those two things are incompatible, right? I want to kill you, and I need you desperately. Yes. Right? So how does a kid deal with that, right? If the parent freaks out, right, and can't tolerate, well, of course you have those feelings, And so when we internalize those feelings, it's not only because we feel guilty about wanting to harm someone, it's also because we love that other person, right? And we want to protect them from our own destructiveness, right? And many times it's like the kid will say, I'd rather take the hit.
Yes.
Right? I would rather suffer than have someone I love suffer, right? Yes. So there are also multiple meanings in a way, right? That symptoms, anxiety, headache can serve several functions, right? They can express both love for others, right? And self-punishment at the same time.
Yes.
So we're complicated, but on the other hand, as you're saying, we're all more alike than different, right? Yes. These are normal feelings and wishes, right? That we all have and have to learn to manage, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I applaud you for talking about it. Is this surprising to anybody? Is this, you know, a relief to anybody to hear, oh my God, this mixed feelings that I'm getting from that? This for me is such a powerful piece, in my opinion, where we compartmentalize feelings, we pick them, we choose them,
right,
and then cut the rest. And that's often, for me, why we're symptomatic, because as Brene Brown says, we cannot selectively numb feeling. You numb one feeling, you're going to numb
right,
all.
Right.
And I think that realization that not only is it human to have mixed feelings and ambiguity and all, but that's just going to be the way it is. That's something that we need to be able to embrace and congratulate that's part of humanity. Is I love you, but I'm jealous of you. I
would say it's not I love you, but I love you and
thank you. Yes.
All these feelings are connected. It is because I love you that when you stand me up, I feel really hurt and I get really angry, right? They're connected.
Yeah.
And in fact, we know that the healthiest and most resilient relationships actually find a way to deal with anger and conflict successfully. Because as you said, if you have to deny that you're angry with someone you love, right, you can only love them, you're going to suppress, right, your disappointment and your anger. And then over time, like you say, the love will start to get sloshed underneath that, right? Yeah. So you'll start to just be more distant, or you'll start to lose that loving feeling. And that's really because you've been suppressing those other feelings.
Yeah.
Right. And you'll find that if you're able to, again, you know, in a constructive way, not screaming and yelling, but, you know, say, boy, I realize I've been distant recently, and I now know it's because I felt really angry with these comments that you made at the party. And I really want to talk to you about it so we can sort it out. You know, that strengthens relationships.
Yeah. And
it helps you to correct and get back on course. And if you keep ignoring that and suppressing it, the relationship is going to wither and die. So I think, again, in our culture, we have very adolescent views of love and, you know, really are confusing that with the early infatuation stage. And real love, in fact, can only happen after disappointment, right? After, right, you've had to deal with difficulties and sort out conflict, right?
Oh, sure.
Deeper, more solid love can develop.
So where can we bring this to so that there's room to sort of straddle both camps, as it were, so that there is an appreciation and a welcoming of, I have feelings, I have mixed feelings, and it is not only okay, but very necessary for me to allow them and be compassionate to allow them in,
right?
But also not get overwhelmed and taken over and then, you know, caught in and obsess about them and get myself into trouble with just the focus of I'm so... What would you say is a nice middle ground for people to hear a message of?
You mean if you're going to communicate it?
Yeah.
Right. So those are two different things. So first of all, I would say you should There's no reason to ever suppress a feeling you have inside. Between you and you want to feel whatever you're feeling because that's energy and information. When it comes to expressing it, you have to use your judgment. Again, be clear about the why. So if you're angry and you're communicating in order to get back at somebody or to hurt them back, probably not a good idea, right? So you have to be in a place where you're going to speak about it because your intention is actually to remove barriers and to deepen the relationship. And so John Gottman, who's done more and better research than anybody on the planet on what makes relationships work, talks about how important it is to create a context. So if you're going to talk to your partner or your child or your parent, whoever it is, a coworker, about something difficult, there are some things you can do that are going to increase the likelihood that that goes well. First of all, you want to prepare the listener. Just because you're ready doesn't mean they are. Right? So you want to be respectful and say, you know, I have something important I'd like to discuss with you. Is this a good time for you? And if they say no, don't push it. Say, great. Can you tell me when it would be good so we can put that on the books? So you make sure the person is open to hearing it. And then, if at all possible, start with something positive. This is what Gottman calls the soft startup. So you don't just start in, you know, complaining about the other person, but you say, look, I care about you. I want us to have the best working relationship we can have. And I realize that I've been holding some things in that are really interfering. So in order for us to work well together, I feel like I need to voice this, right? Or again, in an intimate relationship, I love you, I want to be close. And when I keep this stuff inside, it creates distance. And I don't want that, you know? So it's really out of love that I want to tell you how hurt and angry I am about X, Y, or Z. So you can already feel how different that is than someone just barging in and saying, I'm so pissed at you and blah, blah, blah. You know, now sometimes we're going to do that, right? We're not going to always be, you know, in perfect control. But what's equally important that Gottman has also confirmed is to repair it. You know, we all make mistakes. We say stupid things. Own up to it. Right? You know, and acknowledge it without excuses. You know, I did that. I'm sorry. And then even further, I commit, right, in the future, right, to really think before I speak or whatever that might be. So there definitely are rules of engagement, right, that are really going to, again, make your communication much more successful. Right, than just blurting it out. So you have to be really mindful when you're speaking about difficult feelings to other people. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, look, I'm mindful of time here. Yes, I could talk to you.
I'm running out of battery.
I could talk to you forever, and I'm sure people want to hear from you forever. Just, I want to make this point before we go, because I think it's important. I'm sure there's a lot of people who'll be listening, really happy to hear you say, listen, you've got it. And I, as me, both of us saying, you got to listen to what you're feeling and pay attention.
Right.
What do you say, and I don't know if there's a quick way to answer this, to people who've been raised for decades in a culture and a family or whatever, where people are saying, don't rock the boat, don't cause a scene, don't upset anybody, just keep it to yourself. So I'm sure people are listening. So I'm sure there's some people listening, curious and interested and happy to hear you say you must express. But what do you say to that?
I don't think you must express always.
Okay.
I think you must experience. So there's experiencing the feeling between me and me inside. And I'm saying you should always do that, right? There's no advantage to you to suppress what's happening inside. But when it comes to expressing, you really have to be much more careful and mindful. And first of all, you only want to express your feelings to a person you actually want to be close to, right? So even if I'm frustrated with my auto mechanic, it doesn't make sense for me to say, listen, John, I really need to tell you how angry I am. I mean, I don't want to be close to him. We're not having that kind of relationship, right? Or also, I thought this was another really great sort of rule, you know, me and the rules, like 3 strikes and you're out. Well, here's sort of in that same camp. Yep. So when you're expressing feelings to somebody, how can you tell whether they're emotionally available or not? Actually, there are only 2 responses. So if I say to you, Poppy, you know, I love you, I want our relationship to be as good as it can be, and I realize I'm upset about a few things and I need to talk to you about it. Is it okay? And you say yes. And then I tell you about it. There are only 2 responses from you that can let me know that you're available for that. One is you would say, oh, really? I didn't tell me more. Oh, what was that like for you? You're going to show an interest in it, or you're going to say, oh my gosh, you know, now that you bring it up, I realize I've actually been pissed at you because last month, right? And so you respond in kind. Anything else, you shouldn't feel that way. Why do you have to make such a fuss? I didn't do that. You that blah, blah, blah. Anything else is telling you that person is not emotionally available at least at this time. Nice. And I would say again, give them another try another time, but generally I say 3 strikes and you're out. So if you've tried 3 times, because I had this with a good colleague who I had considered a friend, and things started happening, and 3 times I tried using every, you know, positive Gottman thing, you know, and this person was they were not available. So after I said, forget it, then it's on me. If I keep opening up to someone who's repeatedly shown me they have no interest in how I feel whatsoever, then it's on me, right? First time, shame on you. 17th time, shame on me, right? Yeah. So again, you have to be mindful about how you're speaking, but also be sensitive to, like, are you with somebody who actually cares how you're feeling and is emotionally available or not? And if not, you realize, okay, maybe I can go to the movies with them once in a while, but, you know, they're not going to be a close friend, right? Because they're not open on that level.
Beautiful. Yeah. That's such a nice way to have clarity about to what degree is this person open and emotionally sophisticated enough to meet me, which isn't necessarily personal.
Right. So often, it never is, I would say, right? How people behave reflects on them, not you. Okay. That's very important to be clear about, because otherwise you're going to keep chasing unavailable people and keep saying, well, maybe if I say it this way or that way, you know, forget it. Right? Yeah. The way people react tells you about them.
Yes.
You realize, oh, that person's not emotionally available. Okay, then I'm not going to keep pursuing them for that.
That's so powerful, Patricia.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think that's going to be like huge for a lot of people to really 2 ways that you're going to be received. One is, please tell me more, and the other is, oh, okay, I'm ready to have a conversation about what I'm experiencing as well. Otherwise, you're knocking on the wrong door, really. It's not going to open. It's not your door.
That time, right? So you can try again another time, but if you keep getting that same response, they're not available for that.
That's kind of golden.
So, yeah.
Golden. Thank you. Right. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you,
Poppy, so much for doing this and for sharing, you know, so generously and so enthusiastically.
Well, and always I will be, is that you're a gift to us in such a big way. And this is how we met. And some of you know the story. I was one of the 3 strikes and you're out. I was a student of Patricia's many years ago and just couldn't receive, wasn't in a place to receive. I was sabotaging, and you said, I'm not dealing with your shit. Basically, I'm doing my bit. You're not showing up. 3 times. Goodbye. And it was so powerful. And I was just there like, oh, wow. Okay. I've only got me to look at now. It was so powerful. Such an education, such respect. And I thought, I'm doing that. That's brilliant. I'm on it. I'm on board. So it took me some years, and I was desperately sorry that my crap was between us, but that was where I was in my life.
That's just what is. That's right.
Yeah. Good that I love that you took care of you. Where can people get hold of you if they want to reach out to you in some kind of a way?
Yeah.
How do we do that?
Yeah, the best way is just to visit my website, which is ISTDP. So that's for Intensive Short-Term Dynamic Psychotherapy, ISTDPnortheast.com. And I think Poppy will write it. So
I will.
You can also get there through my name, patriciacoughlan.com. Is another website, so you can look at videos and different things I have there. And then there's also a contact link, so they can contact me if they want to.
Beautiful. And what I would say, I suppose, in closing is what I know of people who are wanting to do this more conscious work, where you really want to start to look at some of this stuff and begin to change things, change the dynamic in your relationships, have the kind of conversations that matter, find tribe of people who are doing it. And here's a perfect place now where there's so many people on this page. It's not even funny. It's beautiful. Put your name, put who you are, connect with people. There are many people doing this kind of work here. You can start to make connections with people who are doing the scary stuff. This is confronting stuff to start to have really powerful conversations. So connect with people, and you know where to get me. I'm always here doing this, and you're a delight, my love. Thank you for sharing your time with us, and a happy Easter to you.
Yes, and the resurrection, right? So this is very pertinent time to talk about, right? Transformation, resurrection, which we all have the opportunity to do. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon.
Yes, you take care of yourself. Bless you, Patricia. Thank you for your time. Big love.
Bye.
I shall come over your comments soon, my lovelies. Happy Easter to you. I'm very pleased to share her with you. She's just something else. Love you, all of you. Have a wonderful Easter. Really, really, we're here. There's a lot of people doing this kind of work. Connect, get some support for yourself. Be your brave you. And
are you there?
Very soon. Oh, we're off. We're both leaving.
Okay. So it's no longer live?
We're done.
Oh, it still says live though. Is it?
We're done.
Okay.
We're off for Easter.
Okay.
Big love.
My computer is almost out of battery, so I'm going to run.
Patricia, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
See you again, my lovely.
Okay. Very good. Bye-bye.